Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of listening to my stupid wet-haired self talking about things. I'm always fresh out of the shower when I do these videos. I need to start calling it something to do with that. But I wanted to do a video on the racing industry because this is a really hot topic in the horse world, and I find that there's a lot of misconceptions despite how easily found a lot of the information from the Jockey Club and their statistics is. Like, if you just Google it, you could find it. So there's really no excuse for people to be misrepresenting a lot of these arguments to the extent that they do. So with that said, like, you're still entitled to your opinion. I don't care if you don't like the racing industry, that's fine. But if you're going to present an argument, you need to do it correctly, because otherwise, if you're actually genuinely concerned about these horses, you aren't helping the situation by misrepresenting the argument and including false statistics and just straight up like opinions that you're trying to present as fact to people, and you're not helping horses out of bad situations. You're not helping the industry. If you want to do that, you need to have the facts right, and you need to present both the good and bad parts of the industry, because if you really want to see change, you need to support those who are the good in the industry, because they're the people who are going to change it. Okay, so without further ado, the one thing I want to point out first is that the Jockey Club actually has an injury database that is like on the first page of their website. Like, you can see it as soon as you go onto the Jockey Club website. And this is where they keep track of the injuries and fatalities on the racetracks. So they actually do have the rate of breakdowns listed, and it drops every year. This is the fourth consecutive year in a row that it has dropped since they opened the database, which was still fairly recently, but this is a really good move that all industries should have, because the Jockey Club's actually holding themselves accountable, which no other industry is doing, and I'd really like to see it, because it's easy to claim that the racing industry has more injuries because A, they track it, B, they're probably the biggest industry worldwide that's the most popularly watched by people who aren't into horses, so it's just way more open to the public eye, and C, once again, it's way more open to the public eye because most people are schooling and running their horses on the tracks that are public and anyone can go watch during the workout. So if any abuse occurs, another trainer could see it, some random guy who decided to come watch the works could see it, other riders can see it, the outriders can see it, and like it's way more regulated. Well, to even be a groom at the track, you need to hold a groom's license, and to get a groom's license, you need to apply for it, which involves getting a criminal records check. So I had to do that when I got my groom license. And to train, you for sure need a training license, which obviously a lot of trainers on like the circuits don't necessarily have a license. They've just given up their amateur status and gone professional. So it's more regulated because you need a license just to groom the horses and just to take them into the paddocks, and you obviously need a license to gallop them there too. So I am on the Jockey Club injury database, and I just want to talk about the percentages of breakdowns. The database started in July 2008, so the earliest year that you can look at is 2009, at which the rate of breakdown was 2%. Since then, it has consistently dropped. Other than 2010 and 2011 were at the same rate, but from then on it continued to drop, and most recently in 2016 it was at the rate of 1.54%, which is a pretty big drop if you take in mind like how big of a pool of horses they're looking at. And 2017 is expected to drop too, but obviously that's not released yet because the year is not done. It's also important to keep in mind that a lot of the good trainers are aware of how young their horses are, and they're not going to push them super hard in their 2-year-old year. The people who do push their horses very hard are typically the ones who don't have very sound horses. But a lot of trainers are aware that their horses are still young and growing, and they'll train their horses and then they'll give them time off. Like, a lot of our babies have gone home and come back, and some of them are just home for the year to grow up more, and then they'll be back next year as 3-year-olds. So only a couple of our 2-year-olds have actually raced this year, and they've probably raced like 1 or 2 times. The next thing that a lot of people like to claim to try and knock down the racing industry is that like all or a lot of the thoroughbreds who can't run anymore, maybe because they're too slow or because they got injured, are sent to slaughter. First off, a lot of tracks have no kill policies, and this means if you're caught sending horses to slaughter, you can get banned from the track, and this would ruin a lot of trainers' livelihoods. So from that standpoint, it's not worth like the $500 or $600 you're gonna get for meat to sell your horse there if it means that you could literally get kicked out of the track you're at and lose your job. Secondly, if you actually look up at the most recent statistics that they've done for slaughter in North America, the horse breed that is showing up in the kill pens the most is actually quarter horses. So I've never seen anyone having outcry at AQHA because of this. With that said, it doesn't mean that all these quarter horses are registered, but they're still showing up more than double the amount of thoroughbreds. Okay, so 51% of horses that were seen in the kill pen were quarter horses, with thoroughbreds being the runner-up in terms of breed category that's seen, and then the rest of percentages were like a mix of all types of different breed types. So thoroughbreds were at 20%, which is still fairly high. However, you cannot assume that all those thoroughbreds, first of all, raced. They could be unraced, and secondly, they could be getting sent there after the track, because there's a lot of crappy people everywhere. There's a lot of old like hunter jumper horses that will get sent to slaughter, and from other disciplines as well. So anyone can send a horse to the kill pen. It's not necessarily a byproduct of the racing industry. A trainer could sell their horse to what they believe to be a good home, and the person could have overtaxed themselves and taken on a horse that's too much for them and then opted to send them there. So it's not really fair to blame the racing industry as the main problem, because if we're going to blame any industry, maybe we should start looking at AQHA, since they're the main problem in terms of what's showing up in the kill pen the most. So another thing that the Jockey Club has done to try and encourage more safety and healthier horses is they've implemented the Thoroughbred Safety Committee, and this is a quote from the website, which is to review every facet of equine health and to recommend actions the industry can take to improve the health and safety of thoroughbreds. So what I want to ask you guys who are completely anti-racing and turn your focus to only racing instead of your discipline or other disciplines is, what is your own discipline doing? Because I haven't really seen any other industry going to the same lengths to hold themselves accountable, first with the injury database and to improve themselves with the Thoroughbred Safety Committee. And I really do think that no matter what, all industries should be held accountable and they should be doing stuff like this. I wish it was seen more, because there's no ability to access statistics to see how many horses are getting injured in, let's say, the hunter jumper circuits. So this really just grinds my gears, because the Jockey Club has actually taken steps to hold themselves more accountable than other industries. To my knowledge, I don't think there's any other industry that's gone to these lengths. Since the injury database was started, there was a 23% drop in deaths, and that's within 9 years. So that's pretty significant, especially taking into account how many horses there would be that they're keeping track of, and it shows that there is improvement. So the Jockey Club has been doing something right in terms of monitoring this and putting incentives in place to try and keep their horses safer. So it's actually working. There's a drop, there's proof of a drop. And I think that's something that people need to take into account, because things don't happen overnight, change doesn't happen overnight, but the Jockey Club has proof that there has been change, which is more than what other industries can say. Okay, and another issue a lot of people have with the racing industry are the stomach issues and stress issues that racehorses can have, which I talked about in my last video. That's not specific to racing at all. They live a very similar lifestyle to what horses showing the circuits would have, except as a general rule, racehorses are pretty much guaranteed to have off time through the winter, or in wherever their off season is. Some horses race through the winter if they're living somewhere warm, but they get letdown time where they're put out on pasture. Like, there's signs all over the track locally at the end of the season for barns that are open for business for letdown time, since trainers are often looking to do that. Some of our horses went up to the interior of our province and they were out on a big 5-acre field to run around on for the whole winter. So they get a lot of pasture time with that in mind. And like my barn's unusual in that, since we have the farm, our horses actually get turned out when they're at the farm, and then they come home after their races when they've been at the track, and they get turned out and get to go in the paddocks. And during the season they can't get group turnout because they have back shoes, but in the off seasons they do, a lot of them do go out together. Our horses are also treated preventatively for ulcers, so they would not be likely to have them. The 90% statistic for racehorses is related to horses who do not go under preventative treatment. So this is for trainers that do not preventatively treat with omeprazole and other medicines that you can use. For ulcers, most trainers honestly should be doing this if they want their horses to run the best they can, because obviously ulcers are uncomfortable and it's less likely for the horse to run well. So ulcers aren't specific to racing because what causes them are the high grain diets and excessive stalling and any stress associated with moving around and going to shows. So these are pretty specific to any horse who's in like an unnatural show related situation where they're moving lots or not getting treated preventatively or getting lots of grain. So it's not specific to the racing industry. So this is a poor argument to have and only attack one industry for, because if you want to be realistic, you need to look across all industries and see that they're all having similar problems, and that's kind of what we need to be directing our attention to, because we have to look at how we've let down horses across the board in all industries. There's bad people everywhere, bad things go on in all industries, bad things are getting rewarded in the show world. There's just room for change everywhere, and it's not really specific to any discipline. Okay, so the next thing is that they're all started young, which I will say that I do think that it should be changed to 3, and there's consideration for that in the future. However, there are ways to train them and help guarantee that they're not going to get injured. And you can see the barns that do this right because they have way less injuries, and there's been studies done, I'll link them below. So people who train above that threshold and continue to push their horses are the ones that you typically see breakdowns with. Obviously there's certain bloodlines that are more prone to breakdowns and certain issues that horses can have that make them more susceptible to that. But a lot of trainers who have a good track record of training correctly do not see issues like this. Like, my barn hasn't really had a breakdown like that at all, unless it was like a freak accident, like a horse being run into and falling down on the track or something like that. Now, it's also important to point out that 2-year-old competitions are pretty popular across the board. Futurity classes and other disciplines encourage them to be showing at that age, so they'd be started around the same time as race horses are. And then circuits like the Hunter Jumper Circuit have the young horse classes, which are promoting young horses over large fences, which is pretty damaging in the same way that racing can be if you overstress them. And there's varying degrees of severity, of course, when you're starting young horses in work, and all disciplines are guilty to a certain extent. So it's really not specific to racing, and looking only at racing is letting other disciplines off the hook to a large extent, especially since these other industries aren't tracking their injuries and holding themselves accountable to the same extent. So I really think that it's important to make sure that you're not pinpointing your argument to one industry and ignoring how messed up a lot of industries in relation to horses are. Okay, and then for people who say that they hate running, now that I've been galloping racehorses, that's actually really cool, because they basically like are born trained almost. Like, you take them out on the track a few times in company and they start naturally wanting to go and be ahead, and they'll start doing their lead changes pretty naturally. Like, most of them will have a natural change going into the corners, and it's really cool. Like, they pick it up really fast and it's totally bred into them. And like, even in the fields, like, our yearlings race each other. They run around and they're actually racing each other in the fields. And like, the hardest part of galloping these horses is holding them back, because they want to go so badly. And obviously there are some horses who may not like their jobs, so that goes for any industry at all. Like, there's probably a ton of jumpers who hate their jobs, a ton of dressage horses who are sour. It just depends on how they're handled and managed. Okay, and then regarding lameness, again, touching on lameness in racehorses, a lot of people have this kind of holier than thou attitude in terms of looking at the racing industry and in injuries. I can't talk. Like, our barn goes like above and beyond what pretty much any other barn I've ever been at would for like soundness. Like, if a horse is even like slightly off, they'll like check on them, they get chiro work, they get massages, they get like all sorts of special things. They'll get sent to the vet for full diagnostic work for things that are just like a little niggling thing to try and check out and make sure that they're okay. We do take very good care of our horses, and they get the best care. Like, if they ever do get injured, these horses are the ones that are getting like stem cell implants to try and help them heal better and quicker, which a lot of people wouldn't be willing to put the money into. Last bit of controversy I've seen recently regarding the racing industry is this new piece of machinery. in which they can attach the horses on the track to this machine, and it will exercise the horses for the barn. And I've seen a ton of controversy regarding this, people being concerned that like, oh, if a horse fell down, it would just get dragged, and like all these stupid things that clearly they're just deciding to base an opinion on it without actually looking into it further. So I haven't looked at it yet. I'm going to do it right now, and I'll kind of just do my reaction and I'll read it to you guys. But right now, going into this, I am almost 100% positive that if they're gonna have a machine like that, that it would have breakaway technology, like a hot walker or anything, way if the horse were to fall, because these are really expensive assets. Even if we were gonna go ahead and say that the trainers do not care about the safety of their horses, which most of them do, obviously there's bad guys like there are anywhere. These horses are very expensive, so it would be really stupid to spend all that money on a machine only to have it like fail one of the very basic learning things that we've always learned, even for tying, to have like a breakaway piece, especially when they're going fast. Like that would be a huge error on the makers of this thing. So I would be completely flabbergasted if it didn't have a breakaway function. But we'll look further into it, and then I also want to point out why I do not think that this piece of technology is going to catch on in the way that people think it will. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, is this thing. Which, I mean, like, okay, right there, there's a person to every 2 horses to watch them and make sure there's everything's going okay. This machine, first of all, it costs 20 million pounds. So, like, that is very expensive. To make up that like money that you'd be spending on it, you'd need to like use it for years and have tons and tons of horses to make up what you would have otherwise spent on exercise riders riding your horses. So first off, the price is something that like this is only going to really appeal to multi-million-dollar farms that are already huge names in the racing industry, and if they were to use this, they'd need to use it sparingly, like maybe like what you do for hot walker days. If you're gonna put your horse on the hot walker, let's say like once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever the plan is, it would be something like that, because the horses still need to be able to be ridden by people, because otherwise they're not going to run well in their races with jockeys. They're not running alone, so this is really only something that you could put in a couple days a week or put into young horses' schedules so that they're not always having to carry a rider. It's not something that they can completely just take over as a way of exercising their horses. That's just not going to happen. That with the amount of money that's going into the machine and the fact that they have a worker for every 2 horses to monitor them, there's got to be some sort of breakaway function. Especially since it looks like it's cross ties that are attached to the horses. So even if you were just using like a breakaway halter or bridle, like a leather piece, if the horse were to fall going at that speed, it would pull so much that it would break, first off. And even without that, I'm certain that there'd have to be some sort of breakaway function. So assuming that there's not, when they've barely released any information regarding this type of thing, that's pretty ignorant, because it's kind of just like a common sense thing. If you can buy breakaway cross ties for like $15 for your barn, I'm pretty sure that like a $20 million pound machine is gonna have a breakaway function, especially if it has a person sitting in between every 2 horses. Secondly, I actually like the idea of this because it can keep riders off of the backs of young horses. So if you're anti-riding horses at 2, this is a good solution, because this allows them to build up their bones, like I was talking about with bone remodeling, without having to carry a rider. So this could actually be a really cool thing, especially if they built it into actual racetracks and let people at the tracks use them, which is very unlikely, but I don't think it's like a bad idea, honestly, especially if you're getting them used to it and it had breakaway functions, which again, like, it wouldn't be worth $20 million if it would completely drag your horse if they so much as tripped. It's a good idea in theory. It's very expensive, so I don't think it's gonna be catching on as quickly as the makers of it may hope, but I highly doubt it would drag them. And I bet you, like, if a horse were to trip and pull like on the restraints, there'd be some sort of safety mechanism in place that would start to halt the machine and keep the horses safe. Because if you're spending $20 million on a machine that's just gonna drag your horse and kill it, like, I don't think that product's gonna stick around for very long. And I feel like in testing, that's like obviously one of the things that they test for. Like, I mean, come on, guys. That's my face when people say that everyone's in the horse racing industry for money, because you're honestly a complete idiot if you think that it's that easy to make money when working with horses. The people who are making tons of money are like the top of the top, and most of the people who are in it, at the lower levels especially, are in it just for fun. It's really not something that you go into when you don't even like horses or care about them because you want to make money. Like, that's like, you could do a lot of other things that you're more likely to make money doing. Okay, and then touching on drugging in the industry, there are like, they drug test like tons of horses, and there's like a vet check before races, so your horse can get put on the vets list if they don't pass that. And also regarding the drugging, like, they do drug test very frequently, and if you get caught drugging a horse in a race, like, they can pull like several panels. Obviously people can try to get sneaky and drug with things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to test for or wouldn't think to test for, but if you do get caught drugging, they'll test your whole barn, and if it's something that's like a drug that humans take, they'll drug test all the people working there, and you can get pulled for a drug test just if you gallop at the track. And if you get caught drugging, then you'll get kicked out of the track. So obviously people still do that, similarly to how people drug in other disciplines. Drugging is very common across the board in the horse industry, and I'm not saying that's right, but blaming an entire industry and saying that everyone drugs their horses is completely moronic. And it takes accountability away from the other industries that drug equally as often and do equally as shady things. Like, for example, in the hunter jumper circuit, people will lunge the crap out of their horses before they go into their hunter class so that they look more lethargic, or they'll drug for that too. It's not uncommon. There have been tons of like upper level riders that have big names that have been caught doing that. And it's not to say that everyone does that, but people do shady things even if they're a big name in the industry. And then even just at shows, like, I used to show the Arab circuit, and I saw some things. I was still like really young, like I stopped showing Arabs when I was like 14, but like I'd see horses with like bloody spur patches or like bloody mouths, and no one would report it because you'd be worried about the backlash if you did. And also because I was so young, like I was scared to go report it to the show officials, but stuff like that happens in the warm-up ring and people just don't say anything. Like, there's videos of upper level dressage riders doing shady things in the warm-up ring, and like jumpers too. You can find videos of people doing shady stuff anywhere in any industry, and like those people are the ones that are at fault, not the whole industry. Okay, so I'm sure you guys all know who this video is responding to once again. I've honestly had it with people like saying really inflammatory things and trying to come off like they know what they're talking about. When they cite like no resources, then they're kind of just parroting the most popular arguments against the racing industry that typically come from organizations like PETA, which if you look into, PETA has done like so many shady things that like if you're going to support an animal rights organization, you should pick another one. But anyways, that's like for another video. I think it is complete idiocy to attack an entire industry and act like everyone in it is cut from the same cloth. And also something to touch on is that recently racehorses have become super popular sport horse prospects when they're done at the track. Like, they're very sought after. It is not hard to sell a racehorse. We had one retire because he was too slow. He was my favorite horse at the track. His name was Kevin. And I sold him within like 2 days of listing him publicly. Like, he went fast, and they're actually going for decent amounts of money now, even just track broke. So there's like a market for them off the track. And another thing a lot of people like to complain about in the racing industry is how many horses are bred each year, which is fair. If people aren't breeding good horses and they're just getting thrown away, that's a viable concern. However, since 2007, the breeding rate has consistently dropped. Like, less and less thoroughbreds are getting bred in North America. In 2007, it was at above 35,000, and most recently in 2016, it's at under 25,000 horses that are being bred. So that's a pretty significant drop, and it's continuing to drop every year. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys draw your own conclusions, but I will say that before you blindly believe what someone is saying, if they're going to say things that they're going to present to you as fact, you should want to see statistics, because it's very easy to find concerning videos from any industry, And the one thing that other industries are lucky about is that when they're practicing at home, they're out of the public eye. All this goes on at private farms, so trainers could be literally doing whatever they want to their horses, and they can get away with it way easier. Whereas at the track, if you're abusing your horse, someone can catch it on video a lot easier. It'll get spread around a lot quicker because of the size of the industry. So comparing the racing industry to other places, when they do not track their injuries or have anywhere near the same accountability or licensing, it doesn't really make sense to me, because it's like comparing a fishbowl to the ocean. Racing is the ocean because it is such a huge industry that is so widely viewed around the world. Like most tracks, even the small ones, they video all their races, so if a horse breaks down, you catch it on video and it's very easy to find. If a horse dies at a smaller show, or even at a big show, we had a horse die at the show that I was at, with Milo actually. Like not one I knew, but a horse went down in the jumper ring and it died. It isn't as widely publicized, and racing is, and it's a huge industry compared to the other industries. Around the world, it is huge. It is everywhere. It's like the one thing that like all people who aren't into horses know about. They know about race horses. They know about the racing industry, and they've probably watched a horse race at some point in their life. Those of you who choose to post about certain industries or anything to do in the horse world really, and try to pass off your opinions as fact and try to like say all these inflammatory things to get people up in arms but refuse to cite any sources, all you're doing is promoting ignorance. What are you doing to actually help better the industry and help these horses? Because I make videos like this and I promote adopting rescues. I use my platform to encourage people to adopt. I have 2 rescue animals. I get numerous thoroughbreds off the track. I'm in charge of selling the horses who retire at my job. I help sell them and I find them good homes, even if it means selling them for less than what I could have otherwise got from someone else. I actually look to find a good match for them. I'm honest and upfront with what the horse is and what the person will be getting. I try my best to find them good homes. They're not going to slaughter. None of our horses are. So I think I actually help promote the good in the industry because I'm making sure our horses go to suitable homes where they will be loved. And I'm doing things like adopting rescues and promoting that too. And I promote the good in the industry. I'm educating people. I'm telling them what they can do. But if you're just going to make ranting videos that do not list any facts at all, and you're not going to source where people can read into it further and learn more, so they're just taking your word like it's the law. This is like some Donald Trump-esque thing where they're just blindly believing what you say, even though if they looked, they can literally prove that you're lying right there. There's no excuse to just get mad and make a video without actually looking into something. Like all you have to do is like click a link and read, like Google it. It's so easy to find the information that you seek and see if it is actually factual. So yeah, I hate it when people act like they're the white knights of equine welfare when all they do is rant online about things and they don't make sure that what they're ranting about is actually factual. And they don't provide people with links where they can educate themselves further and hopefully promote change in the industry. They don't do any of that. It's literally just making an angry video that is not even factual and then trying to act like you're like the savior of all horses. It's really, really annoying because these people like to act like they're helping and they're the ones that are promoting change, but they're not. The change is most likely to come from the people within the industry and the people outside of it who contact the tracks and stuff. Like most of the people running tracks aren't horse people. So they are probably the ones that are the least likely to change things to better the horses. You need to contact the tracks and start insisting that they all have no slaughter policies, no kill policies, etc. Start encouraging people, like start petitioning if you want the age to change to older. Start saying things and talking to the right people instead of just posting online without even correct information. I'm going to link everything below so you guys can check it out and educate yourselves further. And if you really want to see change, I encourage you to send an email to your local track and ask what they're doing to ensure the safety of their horses. And you can email the jockey club even. You could contact them and ask what they're doing, what their plans are for the future. Ask more about their injury database. Ask more about what incentives they have for thoroughbred safety. Look up the breeding rates and just educate yourselves. Go to a farm and talk to people. Learn about the local trainers in your area. Learn about which ones are good, which ones are bad. Be present and actually work to change stuff by doing things and presenting people with real factual information instead of just trying to get people excited and upset so that you can get the AdSense money on your YouTube videos. Anyways, I'm gonna do a video on off-the-track thoroughbreds and their misconceptions soon as like my next talking video like this. I'm gonna have a more interesting like hands-on riding type video soon too, but I'm going away this weekend and I don't know if I'll have time to film it before then because it's supposed to be super hot. But anyways, my point is just that you guys need to educate yourselves and learn how to contact the right people instead of feeling like you're actually helping incite change just by commenting angry little messages online and like attacking people who you view to be contributing to a bad industry instead of seeing what they're about and who they're working for and what type of incentives the people they're working for are taking to make sure their horses are healthy and happy. And if you just blindly parrot statistics you heard someone say that they haven't sourced, then you're just contributing to ignorance and you're not helping the problem. So it's really important to be educated. Even if you do not like the industry, you need to educate yourself.